Welcome to everyone who's just coming in. Good evening. How's everyone doing? We're gonna get started pretty shortly. Let me just pin a comment. Welcome everyone who's just coming in. Everyone just comment where you're tuning in from tonight. I'm in Pennsylvania, so we're trying to stay warm as usual. DC, nice. Baltimore, welcome. New York, yep, I know, it's cold. I had some warm blood in me for the past few years because I was living in Florida, but now I'm getting kind of acclimated to the weather in Pennsylvania again. So when I see it today like 45, I'm like, oh, okay, that's not too bad. But I know most other places will be like 45 is incredibly cold. But some people have me beat. I know people in Colorado are like in 10 degrees Fahrenheit and below. So you guys have me beat. Welcome to everyone who is just coming in.
I've lost about 20 pounds.
So can you guys believe that January is almost over? Like it's January 19th of 2021. How did we get here? Tomorrow's inauguration day. This year is already flying by. So make every day count. That's my advice. That's what I'm advising myself too. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, we're gonna get started. So good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining Testimony Tuesdays. I am the host, Dr. Beauty. And for those tuning in for the first time, welcome. For those who are my regulars, welcome back. This show just got started in September of 2020, and it's basically an opportunity to highlight the personal testimonies of several individuals, whether it pertains to their profession, their personal lives. It's just a way to uplift everyone. So that's pretty much what Testimony Tuesdays is about. We've had so many amazing people come through, and I'm excited to keep interviewing everyone. So if you want to be on the show, please send me a DM and I would love to schedule an interview with you. So today's topic, we're going to touch on eating disorders. Now, for those who may not know too much about eating disorders or have a vague idea, it is classified as a mental health issue. So there are several different categories of eating disorders. There's, for example, binge eating disorder, bulimia nervosa, anorexia nervosa. Some of those names may sound familiar to you, but within each category, there's different patterns of eating. Some have purging, some have restricting, preventing the person from eating themselves. So it has to do with one's perception of how they look in the mirror, and many other layers of complexities. And we want to talk about this, my guest and I, because we want to dispel any fake news, so to speak, about it, okay? Because there's a lot of stigmas associated with it at times, and it's a sensitive issue, but we just want everyone to know that this is a issue that my guest actually experienced with her daughter. So I know my audience, I know that everyone in here is sensitive and willing to listen to people's stories without judgment. So this is more than anything a chance to get further educated on this issue from a personal first-hand account, and also give the medical background and give resources for you in case you or someone you know may be going through this, ways that you can get help for yourself or for that person in question. So we're also going to talk about all the amazing things that my guest has done, because we like to have balance. But I really like that we can use this platform as an opportunity to get this information out there, especially with topics that may be considered taboo in society. So the first thing I'm going to do is introduce my guest, Victoria Wills, and then I'll bring her in. So Victoria Wills is an arts educator who works with students in visual and performing arts. She also utilizes art integration to address academic subjects. Victoria's programs reach students in Title I schools, private online platforms, youth shelters, and correctional facilities. She is committed to teaching through a framework of anti-bias, anti-racism concepts to create an atmosphere that encourages students to access, trust, and nurture their own creative courage. Victoria presents and offers training sessions for teachers each year at national and local arts educators conferences on topics relating to her collaborative methodologies and the application of arts in education. Victoria is also the mother of 2 adult daughters, both pursuing careers in illustration. Her youngest daughter was diagnosed with anorexia nervosa, which required urgent medical attention. Thereafter, Victoria became her round-the-clock caregiver during her treatment. This experience inspired Victoria to debunk the myths surrounding the disease with evidence-based research, noting that further discussion could expedite the recovery of those affected. She feels compelled to share her story to shed light on the paradox of eating disorders for whomever it might be interesting to or helpful for. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Victoria. Victoria, did you send a request? Let me see. I think I can also click on your name. So everyone put in your clapping emojis for Victoria as she comes in. Good evening, Victoria.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. I don't see you. I just see I'm afraid to hit X. It says go live with. It says go live with you. It says I can decline or accept, but I don't. Do you see me? Let's see if you see me.
Yeah, I see you.
Yeah, you see me. I see me on the. What's my phone doing? Well,
maybe I can let you out and then come back in.
Okay.
Yeah, let me let you out and bring you back in. Maybe
okay,
Instagram.
let me out.
Okay. You guys know how Instagram is. All day. All right, let's bring her in one more time.
Let's go live.
Can you see me now?
Look. No,
Yay.
It's weird. There's a
Oh, you can't?
No, I see them on the screen. Go live, go live, go live. I'm clicking my phone. Maybe if I throw it, it'll help. That's great. Okay.
Or what you can do, because I clicked on your name, so maybe if you send me a request.
Yeah, I did. Okay. Maybe it's because we're both sending requests at the same time.
Yeah, probably. Okay, let me let you out and then send me a request.
Okay.
All right. Hey, third time's the charm. So let me let her send a request, and then that way we'll see if the camera works. We're probably doing it at the same time. So welcome to everyone who's just coming in. We are talking about some pretty deep stuff today, eating disorders. There's no judgment here. This is a personal testimony. So, you know, this is just a time to educate ourselves and get informed about this topic. Victoria, I have not seen your request yet, so just let me know when you send it. Welcome to everyone coming in. We're gonna get started soon. We're just waiting on Victoria, her request. Let's see. Join and send request as soon as it pops up. Yeah, I don't know if she did that, but I just sent a request for her. Thank you, Mistress Beats. Oh, you just sent a request? I just sent you one too. Okay, well, let's see what happens. All right, Victoria, I sent.
It's working.
Okay, woo!
Oh, happy day.
Oh, happy day. Bro, Instagram. You know what we say about Instagram. It's a love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
So how are you doing? How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's been a wonderful, happy day.
You look beautiful. I love that top or dress. I can't
tell. Thank you. It's a shirt. Yeah, I was like, what am I gonna wear? Fashion always looks so pretty. This will do.
I love it. Thank you so much. And we're complimenting each other because we both have a little pink on.
That's right. Yeah,
yes. So it's so good to have you here. And usually what I do is I do a little icebreaker.
Okay.
So let's see. If you had to go to any coast of the U.S. right now and stay there for the next 6 months, what would it be and why?
Oh my gosh. Well, this is tricky because I have family on one coast and I have family that's over on the other side, but not on the coast, but that would be fun. Did you say on the coast of the U.S. or any coast in the whole world?
U.S.
In the U.S. I guess we can't get, I don't know, fashion because it's COVID.
I know, but let's say there wasn't any COVID.
If there wasn't any COVID?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'd go to the East Coast.
East Coast.
Because my daughters are closer to that side right now.
Okay.
So then just think of all the fun we could have.
I know. Especially now with the cold. There are some fun things to do in the cold, though, like skiing and sledding in the snow and all that.
Yeah, but you gave me 6 months, so that brings us to mid-June.
Yeah, in June. So you'll be able to see a little bit of winter, spring, and summer.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. We can hope.
So how are you doing this evening? How's your week been going? I know it's only Tuesday, but.
Yes. Yeah. Well, as you know, it's Inauguration Eve. So that brings a lot of joy. And today I was teaching and that was pretty fun, and heard some amazing interviews and did some writing and visited with some friends and got ready for this. And and the week, it's actually, it's nice. You know, sometimes when you're in a lot of turmoil, then you don't really recognize when you've come out of it. So, the week after the insurrection, yeah, that was, I don't even know where that went, and so it's not that we don't care and we're not still doing the work. It's that emotionally, I feel like I'm coming back to myself, and I'm not just a little ball of tears on the bed, if I can be honest. Because that level of visible hatred and symbols of hatred and anger are disturbing. It's like a monster in a nightmare that doesn't, that you can't, there's no reason. I mean, there's no reasoning with. So so that was challenging. And so it's good. Yeah, it's good to feel like, however much any of us can ever be in control, at least to be in control of my emotions, so I can be present and do what I need to do is pretty great. And it's sunny here today too, so
that always helps.
That really helps. I mean, sometimes when it's, when you don't feel great, like if I'm just like sad, or it can be wonderful if it's just rainy and gray outside, because then I could just, everything is mirroring. It's just a rainy gray kind of feeling. But I'm happy to see some sunshine out there.
Oh, that's great. So am I. We had a little sun today here, and what you said is very true. We have all these events going on outside of work and what we have to do every day. And it can be tough to decompress within the limited time that we have in between hearing the news and returning to work the next day. So I really do commend you on getting back there any way that you have.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, speaking of next day, I went to work like many of us. I mean, went to work here at this desk. I went to work the next day, and I thought about not going, and as the days wore on, I became more emotional and just more worn down, and I really thought I just need to take the week off. No, I can't take the week off, because I need to be there for the students. And if anybody's there to process that, even one student, then I need to be there for that and represent that something wrong is going on. And so then I was there, and that really helped. So
thank you.
Yeah.
For you and all the teachers who are there with the kids during this time, because they're going through this too. A lot of people forget, and they're processing everything. And it's the teachers that are really there to be that emotional support from 8 to 5 or however long it is for school every day. So thank you.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you say that, because I had an experience, and I heard Lady Doc's daughter, I forget her name, but she came on live, maybe on with Creeps, and she was saying that her teachers were considering they weren't addressing the insurrection. They were not addressing, they weren't addressing it. And to be able to be in a position of comfort that you can bypass those messages of that, that put fear in our hearts. It's just like, it's being complicit. And I had a similar experience with my co-teacher. When I shared, I'm going to give the students some space, some minutes, to offer them, would you like to share or ask questions or get some information from us about it? And she didn't want me to. She didn't want me to bring what she called negativity into the classroom. And so it's just, that was hurtful. That was harm, that was emotional labor that caused harm. And so hearing Lady Doc's daughter bring that up was really great for me, again, reinforcing how important it is to be there. And even when, we did address it, I did make sure to address it. It's the right thing to do. And it just reinforced that and made it, it will make it easier for anyone else in that situation next time who needs to, push past somebody who just isn't understanding what's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, especially with what happened all throughout 2020, we're getting to a point in time where everything's on the table, and there's nothing secret that is going on, whether it came down to the protests or police brutality or anything like that, that every household has not seen, what, regardless of what political party or affiliation, everyone's seeing all this play out, and everyone needs a space to talk about how they feel with regard to that. So I really do think it's important to provide that space for everyone to talk about it, both teachers and students.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess my, who I work with didn't need to talk about it. She actually didn't even, yeah, we'll just leave it there.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you did your part, and we're here, and we have a lot to talk about. First, I want to talk about your teaching style. For those who are just coming in, this is Victoria Wills. She is a teacher, and she has some very amazing concepts that she incorporates in her teaching style, such as art integration. So can you tell us a little bit about how you apply that and what results you've seen from that method? Sure.
So I want to say that just taking a step back, all this lingo that we use now, pivot. Oh, sorry, I'm not going to start cracking myself up. Okay. I think when information is shared, if I'm explaining a concept, expressing, communicating, then at first maybe I try to share that in a method that I take in information and then navigate from there based on how I feel that what's necessary, how the conversation's going. So for me, with respect to teaching through art, different art forms, I hear information and I process it in terms of movement or spatial relationships. And it's just what I do. It's just what I've noticed how my brain works. And I've noticed that through writing, like if I'm in a diary, I'll draw a diagram, or I might need to get up and move that out to really figure out what am I feeling, and then put that down on paper. And so exploring concepts through art forms is the same thing. It's just, fractioning out, if that's a word, branching out into different media. If we're drawing, then that's still physical movement of the body, and eye, hand, and moving hand on paper. And if I'm sharing a lesson through a movement activity, it's the same thing. So I find that using art forms can reach all different learning styles and can allow kids or adults, whomever, to maybe excel for what might have been the first time for them in a certain subject, even if it's not the art subject that we're talking about. And that's remarkable to me when that idea is shared and somebody is expressing that feeling of satisfaction. I think I'm answering back in the first part of your question. Maybe you said, what did I notice about?
Oh yeah. How have you
effectiveness of
the effectiveness, and how are students responding to that method of teaching?
Right. Yeah. Well, that's another interesting thing. So through these COVID-y times, if I sit on a group of teachers, classroom teachers, then I'm so sorry that, I'm hearing the teachers have a lot of stress that they're getting off of their chest. And I'm not having that same kind of stress because my interactions are all through different art forms. And I'll just say I'm working in movement and animation and visual arts and theater, a lot of theater, which is kind of movement, like improv activities. And so my students, and even writing, my students are engaged. They're just engaged. And if it's because they're, I can always bring them in and say, thank you, Gerardo, for getting up and joining us. Yay, you got up, or I'm looking for straight elbows, Sylvia, thank you. So I can bring my students in, of course, if they're not feeling it or they're sick or something, I just want to say I respect that. Also, some of my students might be joining from a shelter or boys and girls club where they might not feel comfy, doing certain kinds of movement that we're doing. So I need to be sensitive to that. I am sensitive to that too. But I have a level of engagement that is consistent, and I think it's because there's so many entry points for a student who's engaging in art. And I make sure that my lessons, it makes it more work for me, but my lessons are extremely open-ended. And if I'm offering, today we were doing, so if I'm offering, I'll finish my sentence. If I'm offering one idea and a student says, can I do it this way? Then I'm just so grateful that they felt comfortable sharing, that they brought the idea to me. And now what a great new idea, because somebody else who didn't raise their hand can do that. We were exploring stereotypes, and I was asking them to write about a time that they had created a stereotype for someone else and found that was inaccurate. And then when were they an experience if they had stereotyped someone else, and then we turned that after that to, when have you given yourself limiting beliefs and stereotyped yourself and found that maybe you really could do that thing or try that thing. And I got so many responses, and oh my gosh, yeah, it was just moving. But the one that ventured out was a boy was saying, well, I stereotyped a book once, and I was assuming it was going to be this kind of book. Can we do things other than people? So that's an example of student engagement to me. Not only am I participating, but I'm making it my own.
Yeah.
I could just pop. I just explode when that kind of thing happens. Because that's, I'm just there to facilitate this information to them. And not only the information, but to let them know that their ideas matter, that their ideas are valid, that just ask and try and communicate and just validate their voices so that hopefully they'll keep doing that for themselves.
I think that's a really great exercise, and a lot of people are complimenting that in the comments because you're giving them that creativity, and when they can make that learning process their own, it sticks with them more. And that's
absolutely,
because they feel like their voice matters. So that's awesome.
It does. And if I can stay here I just share one other thing that happened today, because it was just one of the boys said, Luis, he said a recorder came in the mail for him, and he was intimidated. He thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this. And he went online and Googled some, beginning recorder songs, and he learned how to play Jingle Bells. He was really excited about it. And he said then he felt so successful that he learned one of the traditional songs from his country, of Peru, Peru. It's like he's just really proud and sharing his personal information, and again feeling really validated about it. And I just felt so grateful that we created that space for him at that time.
That is awesome. And I'm sure he went home and played it with his friends or family. I mean, that's such a memorable time in the class.
Yeah, so he realized so that he could, I feel that what we did today reinforced his learning, because I was saying, when had you stereotyped yourself and found it to be inaccurate? And he recognized that in himself. And so reinforcing learning that's an opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. And I know you mentioned that, you have these students coming from different levels of artistic background, but also varying socioeconomic backgrounds. You mentioned you have people who are coming from youth shelters, correctional facilities. So can you tell us what it's like catering to students from this myriad of backgrounds?
Yes, and the way that you led into that question is you mentioned different art abilities. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important to me to be in the public schools, is because of lack of access to after-school programs, or money to buy art supplies in a home, or somebody who's going to sit down with you and teach you how to use a pair of scissors. There's such a disparity of ability because of that. And it's across, different age groups. It's really, you cannot assume that somebody's ever spent time with a pencil and paper. And even if they have, you can't, I don't want to say you can't assume, because you can't, but it's true that kids haven't had the space to just mess around without somebody next to them saying, I'm no good at drawing, and then the child takes that on. Like even teachers in class, when there was class that you'd go to, would stand there and criticize themselves, centering themselves in the conversation. And so there are, when it's really supposed to be about this time to be creative and experiment and fall down and get up, and so there's so many barriers to people of all ages accessing their creativity and being courageous in that moment. So then moving to kids in different settings, so it's a big difference. I find there are generalizations, really sad generalizations. If from a youth shelter to a correctional facility to school. And I find that my immigrant families, most of all, have the best family backing behind them, making sure that they are in school, polite as can be, ready to listen, asking questions, engaging as much as possible in a respectful manner. Wow. Across any school, any county that I've taught in, is my immigrant families are showing up like that. And it's remarkable, because if I'm talking to people outside of school or outside of certain circles, then people may make an assumption that it's actually the opposite. And so that's how it is. It's really tricky in public schools. It's really it's just challenging to get the creativity back, and the creativity muscle exercised, and just get kids back into that space where they feel comfortable trying. And that's why the projects that I bring, I try to work a lot. Like if I'm doing animation, then I'm working with clay, because there's access to clay. You don't really hear anybody say, I can't, as much with, like if you give somebody paper and pencil, then they'll say, I can't draw a cat, because they have this one cat in their mind. But with clay, people feel more free to experiment. So I'm kind of getting off track of your question. So I want to answer this respectfully and with privacy. It's different, with the youth shelters. Some of those kids are just there for the day, and they've run away from a dangerous situation. So that's the most challenging place for me to teach, because I don't know what everybody's dealing with. And all I can do is I don't know, like I feel kind of like a tennis court, like a backboard, and I just have to be there and consistent and visible and present in what I'm bringing, because I don't know what they're going to have to share. Or even, I've had people cry, and I've had kids cry in elementary school too, right? Because but different reasons. But yeah, I did. And in youth shelters, they might just be crying because they're having a really hard time. And so I have to be really, I have to be really together when I'm there, and not need them to reflect what a great time they're having or anything like that. I need to be not only resilient, but I need to have a lot of tricks up my sleeve so I can communicate with what we're doing, or shift the focus, like completely shift the project even. Mm-hmm. if the youth aren't able to participate, I just want to find a level that I can engage them so they can have a positive experience. And even if the experience is taking a nap on the table. You know, again, when I was there, even if the experience means that they're laying their head down and taking a nap, then that's fantastic that they were able to find some peace in that time. And I've had that happen too. And it's you know, it's an honor. And then to the correctional facilities, that's really interesting there, because there's, in correctional facilities, I find that there's, I will get a residency, and so I'll be there for a time and, you know, go again and again for a block of time. And I'll find at first that the youth, so this is young women ages 13 to 25. And then I won't see them, I'll see them in, like in a school, you know, like in age groups, in 3 different age groups. And it's always that they are wanting to know, they're testing me. And they'll say, like, are you afraid of us? You know, they'll ask me things like that. It's heartbreaking. And they'll, yeah, so it's, I find that the youth that are in the correctional facilities are the most like toddlers. They're just very kind of transparent in a way, and really needy and needing attention, needing acknowledgement that I see them for, you know. I didn't expect to get emotional about this, excuse me.
Okay.
Every time I'm talking to you, Fashion.
It's a tough topic.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, they're just people. And, excuse me. You know, it could be any of us there.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it could be any of us. It's just luck of our birth. And, yeah, so that's really important to me, that we're just relating on the level of our humanity.
Right.
And so I see those people, the youth there, I want this to sound as respectful as possible, but they might be medicated, meaning they've had their medical, if they need medication for anything, then they will have received it, and they will have been through, you know, some kind of program to help them, so that they aren't in the same place that kids in a youth shelter might be at. So in that way, it's easier, and it's always hard to leave, because it's just, again, it just feels like such an honor to spend time in that presence. And so it's just interesting. It's interesting. It's like being in middle school again, and seeing the cliques form, but I have a shield against it, because I don't need to be in any of those cliques, but I'm able to observe them. And there's just so much, you know, game playing going on. But as far as the art experience goes, the youth in the correctional facilities are usually perfectionists, and that's challenging for me. There are a lot of the young women will make something, and before I can see it, it's in the trash, or they'll like ruin it because it's just not meeting their standards. And it's, you know, it's really, that's something I try to work through, so that I'm honoring whatever is coming up for them. I don't want to say, oh, it's great. You know, I'm trying to encourage them to, how about if we sit with this where it is? I don't know what level of discomfort they can handle, or anything. I don't know what their challenges are. So again, I'm just, you know, like seaweed in the ocean, you know, like this way and that way, and then come back up to standing again there. So did that describe a little bit of the difference of those?
Yes, perfectly. And the compassion that you have for what you do comes through. Like, everyone in the comments is giving you hugs and commending you on what you've done.
Can't read the comments.
Yeah, I know it's tough. It's most of the time it's hard for me to multitask as well. And in the moment, you know, this is your real life that you're sharing with us, and I really thank you for opening up about that, because working with kids in these facilities can be really tough to come back home and, you know, you're processing everything that they're going through. You might connect with one person specifically. You really see their situation and they've opened up to you. And so taking on all of that and being a light for them is amazing. So thank you for everything that you've done for these students.
Yeah, thank you. Can I share another story?
Yes, please do.
It reminded me, of going forward and talking about things in class, whether or not the co-teacher is ready, is protecting herself against that. I just felt moved to discuss we were talking about structural racism and what that looks like, and how we are all experiencing it together. And I mentioned prison industrial complex, and that people are incarcerated for crimes that they didn't commit. And then when they're released from prison, they don't have their education there. I mean, they may have gotten it, but they don't have a bank account set up. There's not welcoming arms to help to ease them into something new. And one child shared about that he'd seen a video where a man was talking about that he was wrongfully accused, incarcerated for 20 years, a fifth grader. And he shared that story with the class. And so we could talk about that, because again, if you're not in that circle and your parents or adults aren't bringing that to your attention, imagine how differently your whole trajectory of your life will be, and how differently and with how much less information and compassion you will vote.
Right.
So I was glad that, that I followed that need and that voice and did that. And then again, got that answer, that acknowledgement that this was the right thing to do, because it's a ripple effect.
And it does start from home. It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Honestly, I'm really in awe of everything that you've done and that you're continuing to do, because it's not easy. And it kind of reminds me of, in the medical field, talking to patients and hearing their stories, in addition to trying to help them out with whatever complaint they had that day. People are going through so much. And there's this saying about just being kind to everyone you meet, because you never know what struggle they're going through. And we also have to remember to take care of ourselves too. So, I know that we all have our self-care rituals, but, I really hope that you're doing that too, because it's a huge task, but I know that you're handling it well from what you've said.
Yeah, thank you. Well, trying, it's like body surfing. It's like body surfing. And then every now and then you get...
Yeah. Yeah. That's just life.
And then your bathing suit falls off in the ocean.
Oh no.
It's happened. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so, something that I really was happy to hear about is that your daughters are also pursuing careers in the arts too. Mm-hmm. So could you tell us a little bit about them and your relationship with them?
Sure. Yeah, we argue all the time. No, I'm just kidding. Only sometimes. Yes, and they are, that's for the sake of creating a short bio. They're multifaceted people as well. And so they're doing illustration, pursuing illustration, and they have other interests and endeavors happening in their lives also. And our relationship and with art making, I would just like to say that, because I think it's impactful, is that when they were growing up, I was able to give them art supplies, which, that's, again, we're talking about, that's an equity issue. However, no matter what you are able to give your child, if it's also possible for you to then step back and let them have their own personal time and space to just play around and explore, and then recognize that the voices of self-doubt, that we, or as adults facilitating, might have to say, oh, I can't do that. That doesn't help, because it just reflects back on a child. Or even even words of judgment that are positive and negative, saying, that's so good. That's teaching a child to respond and to create work for praise back. And so I found that it was so helpful to just talk about make non-judgmental comments. I see so much blue in your drawing. Can you tell me about that? You know, ask questions, or even to avoid saying, is that a dragon? And say, can you tell me about this large round shape and what it might mean next to this rectangular shape? To really take those judgmental words, and it takes effort on our part to, you know, might just bite your tongue or try to think or feel like you don't have words, but it's okay. And it's better to just say, wow, can you tell me about that? Then, you know, again, then to use, you know, wow, that's really good. That's good drawing. Or, you know, I see how much effort you're putting into your work. I see you trying. Those comments I saw with my kids, and then translates into the classroom. It's just like you just put gas in someone's tank to acknowledge the effort, or just to you know, just to have somebody talk about what they're doing if they want. But again, without that judgment, because once the judgment comes, everything shifts, and then you've got hierarchy. Yeah. And the, you know, that playtime is gone. So so my daughters, they're one is on the east, they're out in the East Coast, one's finishing up grad school and applying for more grad school, and my other daughter graduated just this past graduation, you know, with so many other graduates who didn't walk, you know, and didn't have that public celebration. And she speaks a lot of languages, and she's working right now doing language tutoring and teaching and selling her artwork. And so they're both, and then the daughter that's in grad school is also working. She's working in the museum at the school that she's at, and also in what do you call it? It's like reviewing art portfolios and doing admissions. She's working in admissions as well. So yeah, it's really exciting. I feel it's hard for my daughter that is not connected with a facility right now, or you know, outside engagement. I think being self-employed is fantastic, but when you're a kid, I think it's really nice to be able to engage a little. And so you know, that's my wish. I hope that that the networking that comes from that can come to her too. You know, the unexpected, the people that you meet, you know, I mean, that's what these platforms, this is so great for too, because how did I meet you? You know, where'd you come from? You know, all of it. It's so amazing that we connected. So. Yeah.
I was going to say that too, because it's as if all the bridges that were separating us kind of, you know, linked together, regardless of geographic location. Like, as long as you just turn on your phone, you're automatically connected with all these people from different industries, and it's just a blessing.
Turn on your phone and put yourself out there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's the little caveat. But,
right. You gotta dip your toe in there. I know everybody's got their stories too. I didn't, and then I did, and then
And so I know you mentioned you have your two daughters, and you shared with me that one of them actually went through the diagnosis of anorexia nervosa. So for those who are not familiar with this condition, it's pretty much, to put it in layman's terms, a low body weight. BMI is typically below 18.5. There are different forms, like limiting food, or there may be a purging variant of it. But typically it impacts the eating behavior of the individual. And it can reach a point where there's severe medical attention that needs to be met in terms of replenishing all the nutrients that have been lost. So I know this is a difficult topic for a lot of people to talk about, and in some society's taboo. But I'm happy that you're here to talk to us about it, because there may be people suffering from it who don't want to come forward and talk to their family or physician about it, that need help, or someone who knows someone in their lives that have signs of this, that, you know, they're not sure, but they want to find a way to help them. So just to preface this conversation, would you just let us know a little bit about how this story started for you and what signs that you noticed in your daughter?
Sure. Shared through behavior, and that it crosses all socioeconomic, skin tone, gender, which is really hard for people because people think it's a young white woman's disease. Mm-hmm. And that just makes it more difficult to get a diagnosis. So you were asking, how did I recognize that? And if you talk to a parent, they'll say, here, and then you go back and, oh, well, years ago, that's when I noticed this started. So it's, you know, every sufferer and every parent or caregiver will have their own personal story and experience. So, but for the most part, you could sit in a room with adult caregivers and choose anybody in the room and just say, you tell the story, and it will be everyone's story. It's like the trajectory of a cold. You know, it's interesting. So I noticed first was the discipline. Wow, my daughter is being really, not that she ever wasn't, right? But doesn't matter. But wow, she's having very disciplined eating. That's interesting. She's really caring a lot. Oh, she's doing a cleanse? Why is she doing what does she have to cleanse? Why is she even worried about that? Oh, she's doing another cleanse. Oh, she's only eating smoothies. She's only having vegetables. What you're doing, you have this exercise regimen. Oh, you're exercising. No, let's not exercise after 10 o'clock at night. Let's not exercise after 8 o'clock. Let's not, you know, so it's this level of discipline that starts popping up all over the place. Oh, how interesting. You want to cook food, all the different foods that you can think of from turkey. And you've made us this dinner, but you're not going to eat any of it. And you baked cookies, but now you're not having any. So there's so many little signs. And then you notice the behavior of, you know, that could look like depression, isolation. You know, you're not going to this party that you've been talking about all year. So there are the behaviors of you know, depression, isolating from friends or things that somebody once loved. It could be increased movement, you know, exercise that you see, and then food behaviors show up and as disordered eating. That first looks like discipline, and then little by little becomes diminishing meals that are served to themselves. You know, no, I ate at lunch. I've got a stomachache. I'm bloated. And then pretty soon your child has barely eaten anything. And you because the other thing is, parents wonder, how did that child, how did she let her get so sick? And how did you even end up at that state? And how did, I would never let my child eat that little for dinner. But it's a very elusive, shape-shifting illness, and it is a mental illness, and it is a genetically linked mental illness. And so again, you rack your brain. That's why my mother and my grandmother did those things. That's why I never saw my grandmother eating. She was famous for not eating with us. You know, my mother, that's why she would only take such small bites, and it drove me so frustrating. You know, so you look, or that's, I mean, on both sides. Oh, that's why he only ate these two things, you know, like selective eating disorder. I mean, thank goodness I was born under a lucky star and I need to eat all day long or I'm really cranky and hungry. So that's another thing, is that I don't know if this is too early to answer this question, but what we learned is that some people, and it can be 1 in 10, and that's kind of what it is, 1 in 10 people will not eat and they'll notice that they feel peace. Everybody else feels really cranky and like they need food. But that one person who found peace, your brain is wise and will notice that. And then when there's a stressful situation, that'll be a go-to for, maybe it's not even conscious. I'm going to do this starving thing. I'm just going to not eat. And, I feel okay. I can deal. I can cope with school. I can cope with all these things by just not eating, and it brings you peace. And what happens is that if somebody, and this is why you can have a very high BMI, if somebody loses a certain amount of weight in a short period of time, then the brain chemistry shifts into anorexic behaviors. Mm-hmm. So this is really the most significant connector of people, is a certain amount of weight, and I'm not going to say what it is, in a short time period is the thing that shifts brain chemistry and is so dangerous. And then you start to see this cascade of behaviors. And everyone's path is different. It can take years. But it is definitely connected with these symptoms. And overall, what happens, and oh my gosh, I meant to get a link. There's a great TED Talk by a woman who she describes what it feels like to have anorexia, and it's what sufferers, recovered people have explained to me, is that it feels kind of like what one would describe schizophrenia as. There's a voice in your head and it's telling you don't deserve to live, therefore you don't deserve to eat, and you're doing everything you can to diminish your existence. And so, that would mean, like my daughter didn't let herself sleep in her bed. Like, these are things I heard. She made herself sleep on the floor, or exercise obsession, because it's a kind of purging. You're just purging those calories that you allowed yourself to eat. And so the sufferer is arguing with the eating disorder voice. You shouldn't eat that. You don't deserve to eat that, but you're hungry, so you eat that, and soon you aren't even hungry. So it's a kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, the anorexia, once it sets in, and it's a deadly disease. Yeah. So and because of the, it is important for people to realize that it is deadly, because the two greatest causes of death from anorexia nervosa, one is cardiac arrest from starvation, and the other is death by suicide. Mm-hmm. And we might be hearing that it's really important to normalize discussing suicide, and here's another example of that's why it's so it's why it is a deadly illness. And that was going along with, how did I notice what was going on with my daughter, is that what she would share with me about that, when somebody says, maybe it would be better if I wasn't here, that's when you go to the doctor. That's when we went to the doctor. And she went willingly because she didn't like that feeling. She recognized that was deleterious to her survival. And I'm grateful that she has always had a survival instinct in her, and always came to me for help. That's her superpower. And so we went from noticing that to hearing that level of depression, the food diminishing to that, and that took us to the doctor. I have to back up though, because this is the other thing, is she also, along this path, as I keep saying, it's it's hard to pinpoint the day, but she had a resting heart rate of 42. she called me. She was away at camp, and I sent her to the nurse, and her dad drove down to take her to the doctor. And the nurse said, "Oh yeah, you just got athlete's heart. You must be in really good shape." The doctor where her summer camp was, because it was in a different state, said the same thing. "Yeah, you look great," which is like, you don't say that to somebody with, you don't talk about the way you look. But yeah, you look great. Just keep doing what you're doing. You've got athlete's heart. This is a resting heart rate of 42. And she was either 17 or 18 at the time. And she was 17. And then she came home, and I brought her to a nutritionist who said the same thing. And when I asked the nutritionist, "Can you give us some guidelines?" Because I was trying to take myself out of the picture a little bit to put the onus on the doctor to prescribe what she should do, because sometimes kids listen better to other adults. And she said, "Intuitive eating, just eat what you feel like." Well, this is a child that didn't feel like eating anything but a piece of lettuce and a tablespoon of yogurt every day. So I'm saying this because I want people to understand that not all people are trained to deal with all illnesses. And so if you suspect a specific illness, it's great if you can make sure, or try, do your best to make sure that the medical professional that you're bringing your loved one to, or if it's yourself, that they're trained. So we're talking eating disorders. There is specific training for people in eating disorders. And when you are with a doctor who is trained, it's so relaxing, because you know that they won't use language or behaviors that can cause harm. Mm-hmm. And the harm is life-threatening. Having a doctor, comment on your weight could trigger a response. So I don't want to get too. I don't know where you want to go in our conversation, but
we're open to where you want to go. This is your platform, and I wanted to let everyone know that for those just coming in, we're talking about eating disorders, but specifically anorexia nervosa. In medicine, we do have a manual that we distinguish all the eating disorders with, and all other mental disorders, called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM-5 is the latest edition. So they typically section off anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating disorder, usually the baseline by the BMI, but mainly with the eating patterns and the distorted body image. But like you said, it's very important for medical practitioners to be careful about the language that they use with people going through eating disorders, because of that distorted self-image that they have. When you're commenting on their weight or the food that they're eating, you really have to be sensitive and meet them at their level in terms of where they're willing to go. But as you mentioned too, there are so many side effects of restrictive eating disorders, like imbalance in the electrolytes that can lead to the cardiac arrest that you mentioned. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. And my phone is plugged in, but I have to plug it in again.
Oh, okay.
It came out.
Just wanted to make sure Instagram wasn't trying to kick you out.
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Yeah. So, these disorders can affect also the menstrual cycle of women. The menstrual cycle, the thyroid hormone levels, it just affects all systems. They can have loss of hair. So that's one sign that we can see. It's called lanugo hair. So it's a very thin type of hair that easily falls out in clumps. Okay. Some other signs that you can see if there is purging going on is Ruffsome sign, which is like an erosion of the back of the hands, because some people can try to induce vomiting on their own. So these are some of the physical signs that people should be aware of when it comes to recognizing eating disorders in their ones. Can you hear me, Victoria?
Yes. I just had to. I had to be my own tech support for a
Oh,
second.
no problem.
Redo some lighting, and because the sun's going down, and things were. I think we're good now.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So thank you.
no,
Yeah, as far as that's the thing about cardiac arrest is that you were talking about the electrolytes and having my daughter with the the resting heart rate in the low 40s. The heart muscle is starved because of starvation. Just think of any photos you've seen from the news of people starving, and that's what you see often, not always. And if you aren't seeing, and people who have eating disorders, who have restrictive eating disorders, will start wearing loose clothing so that people can't tell how thin they are. There's a lot of hiding there. So it's just so important that a physician knows the way to check the heart rate, to check the blood pressure, and to know if this person needs the diagnosis, if they need to go to clinic, how you need to accurately and effectively address the illness that is being brought to your office. So so we did that, and we were sent to a clinic, and we were there together for 6 months. The clinic was a day clinic, and pretty much across the street down the block was a Ronald McDonald House. So we both stayed there, and that's a fantastic organization to support, because they're there. It exists to house families of children with life-threatening illnesses, and there you are with a home right next to your loved one. So she would go into clinic, and then I was just there for her. And because I'd mentioned the level of depression and the risk of suicidal ideation, it was important for me to be with Anna round the clock, every day, all day, including the bathroom, every second, to make sure that she was safe, because self-harm is something that starts to play into that. And you can imagine what that does to a relationship when you've got somebody. I mean, for any parent, it's hard. But you have to infantilize your child in this treatment. And so I can go, to an organized, address this in a more organized way, that this disease has a lot of paradox attached to it, an astounding amount of paradox, in which what is the necessary cure or path to recovery is really what people think is the problem. When you tell somebody that, and you want to go into hiding. And so I'm saying, having fashion, you were mentioning, why this could be helpful for people. And just so that you can be a good friend to somebody, if, heaven forbid, somebody who is, or whose child or anybody is suffering from anorexia, to just be there and listen and be supportive, and not say, oh, she really wants to control things, right? She finally wants some control in her life. Because it's not a disease of control in that way. It's a disease in which the sufferer is controlled by anorexia, and they're doing everything they can to survive. So there's a paradox there. It's paradoxical because people will blame the parent. You have been too controlling of your child, and so therefore, and actually the parent needs to control the child's eating and safety and surroundings, really in a way that infantilizes them, put them in a bubble so they can heal and not be in the presence of people commenting on their weight and anything else that you can imagine. Even, just talking about the disease, asking, where have you been? Are you coming to the prom? Can you go on a run with me? When you have a resting heart rate of 42, you're in a wheelchair. It's dangerous for you to walk. So that's another reason why I had to be, 24/7.
And just so everyone knows, normal is 60 to 100 normally. That's the normal.
Yeah. So, she was allowed to walk across the street to get to clinic. Once she could. But there were plenty of people there in wheelchairs because they, once they could walk, they would be able to walk. But you're breaking all the cycles of disordered eating. You're breaking the habit of exercise obsession. And inside of your child's voice, head, is a voice saying, it's like a terrorist. You have to listen to me or else. And the sufferer is terrified to eat. It's not that they don't want to eat, they're going to get fat. It's that they are terrified of what's going to happen, what piece they're going to lose. And so, you can't trust them. So again, saying that it's important for parents to know it's not their fault. It's not because you shared a magazine or watched a movie. Certainly there are behaviors that we all have in which we can do better. But those behaviors do not cause this life-threatening mental illness, which is genetic, right? So, back into that, the paradox of it is that you are forced. I had to drop everything to care for her. And of course you do, because you're the parent, which is the other side of parents not causing the disease, but being instrumental in the cure or the path to recovery, because medical evidence shows that the parent caregiver is the one who is the most invested in that child's well-being and knows that sufferer the best, and therefore needs to be placed in the position of care if it's possible. Some people need to go to residential care and the parents just can't do it for all different reasons, and that's okay too. But it is really, it's important to break through those fallacies, those paradoxical fallacies, because I've never seen anything that is what people think it isn't, or isn't what people think it is. And so putting the person in that bubble, really taking away control so that you can again introduce ordered eating. And so for us, that looked like Anna being in the clinic, which was lots of therapy, lots of group meetings, and eating under circumstances with doctors and therapists. And what we had, and this is also an evidence-based strategy, is that you're given a meal plan and the doctor says, here's what you're eating, so that I wasn't the bad guy. Food is your medicine, this is what we're eating, and then it's up to me to make sure it happens, which is really challenging because you care for your child, you want to believe them, but it's kind of like the movie The Exorcist. Your child is possessed by the eating disorder voice and will do anything, including throw a chair at you, run into a street with moving traffic to escape having to eat, hiding food in any under their fingernails, in their clothes, anywhere. And it's humiliating for the sufferer because they're aware of what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And it's embarrassing and humiliating to take on that behavior. But they do, because they have this very cruel voice inside of them. And so again, the parent needs to protect themselves from all the well-meaning individuals who know why their kid is sick, because you need every drop of energy to take care of your child and yourself, so you can be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for 6 months or however long it takes. And so, yeah, we were up there, and then I was there for another, year, being present when she started college, just so that she could go to college and I could be there, to make it possible, because you want to, real life is a great motivator for the sufferer, and knowing that when you're able to eat this regularly and regain your weight and have your blood work show that you're recovering, and return to your menstrual cycle if you have a menstrual cycle, because this is all genders, then real life is waiting for you. And so it's so, you want to take somebody out of life and you want to make sure that they still are aware of life, because that's what's going to motivate them and bring them back. So yeah, it's again another paradox of this disease.
And you know, parents like you are such a vital component of the recovery process and even the initial diagnostic process, because as you mentioned before, you notice those patterns in your daughter, which is what the physician is going to take note of: the eating habits, the weight loss, even the diet pills, the laxatives, the cleanses, all that that's going on. If it's a female, the loss of menstrual cycle, or if it's a male, the loss of weight. You're taking note of all of that, and being attentive as a parent is so crucial to diagnosing this. And of course, the mood changes too, because as you mentioned, a lot of times this is accompanied by depression and even suicidal thoughts. So you being there and taking note of that and being there for your daughter in a non-judgmental way, I really commend you for that, because it took a lot of strength on your part, and also you helped in her recovery too, because on average, the recovery from anorexia nervosa can take months to years.
Yeah.
Usually years.
8 to 10 years.
Mental disorder, and some people may never recover. Some people may go into remission and come back into it. But having the support of family members like yourself is so important. And there are some complications too that we can talk about as well. I don't know if you're familiar with refeeding syndrome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm sure that the medical team that was working with you at the time told you about that. For those who do not know about that, when someone is severely malnourished and they start the refeeding cycle again, trying to get those nutrients replaced, sometimes the body kind of goes into shock because it's not used to all of that. So you really have to take note of the electrolyte levels, the nutrient levels before starting that process, and really titrate that and not just rush it all in. You can't just tell them, oh, just, eat a full meal. You really have to be with licensed nutritionists who know the full medical picture, who know the appropriate level of weight gain that they should be getting per week, per month, because this is a really real complication that can land someone in the hospital. So what experience did you have with the nutrition team when it came to this?
Yes, well, again, just a reminder, the first nutritionist told her keep eating what she's eating. So then we found a woman she's really connected. She's so active in the eating disorder community. She's a nutritionist, and she speaks and attends conferences all over the world, and there's an organization called Feast. I think it's feast/ed.org. If you just type in Feast, it takes you somewhere strange. But Feast, and there might be a period between the letters, or not. But anyway, she works with these people, and sorry, I'm going back. Yes, nutritionist. Right. Okay. So in the beginning, when I first brought Anna to her, she gave me a plan. Here's what Anna needs. Here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to not do. And I want to say this. I did not follow what she said exactly, because it's hard. You think, okay, I made sure she ate everything, but we must be able to go on a walk around the block, or sure, you can go, we can just walk, we can just do this little thing. And that might have been okay. But since this is like an addiction, and addiction makes people lie, and anorexia is that cruel voice inside your head telling you don't deserve to eat or live, what I didn't take into consideration was that Anna was also restricting more that I didn't see, and exercising more that I didn't see. So what I saw was a walk down the street and back that I thought would be really good for her spirits was not the end of the story. So it was, I really encourage people to follow what the doctor said. And it's, your child is there just like begging, crying. They're being so talented at having all the different personalities that they need to manipulate you, to do, what they need you, want you, what the eating disorder voice is demanding. So we had that period, that time period between, that first diagnosis, and then as soon as the nutritionist said, Anna needs to go to a clinic, you both need the help. Then, we were there. We called, we got in that weekend. We were in the Ronald McDonald House. And I was really apprehensive about living in a facility with lots of parents whose children were suffering life-threatening illnesses. And there's so much hope there. Everybody wants their children to live. And there were children, who didn't. But there's a lot of hope there, and it's an amazing facility. Everybody gets there. It's like a very fancy hotel where everybody has their own suite, like your bedroom and your bathroom and everything. And there's an incredible, exquisite communal kitchen, which I think is all different now because of COVID, but people would come in and anyway. So we stayed there, and there was that. They are too trained to support people and parents who are suffering, who are caregivers. So, once we got there, that medical team is a complete medical team with pediatricians and nutritionists and psychologists, psychiatrists, physical therapist. It's really comprehensive. Hypnotherapist, just everything to address what people need to be happy. And I think it brings me to something really strong that we learned, which is that recovery shows up in your state. Your condition should be considered in terms of your state, not your weight. So we would never, the doctor can look at weight along with blood work and behavior. And so for us, it was out of my hands. I didn't have to weigh her. She didn't have to look at a scale. And as a matter of fact, for several years after, she has on her note at her doctor, I'm not to see the scale. And so they have a scale that you can stand on, and they can reverse the screen and see it so that the person doesn't have to look. So going right in, they do blood work so that they can address refeeding syndrome and make sure they're not starting you off with too much food. And then once somebody does start eating and the body starts gaining, then your metabolism really can fluctuate and get really high. And so the person might need to eat a lot more, which is very stress inducing. So along the path to recovery, it can be terrifying because you think, okay, I got this, we can do this, she can eat this specific meal plan. And then the doctor says, guess what? You have to dump this fat mixture in and make her some fatty smoothies and get her to drink those 3 times a day. And your child is, you can see there's no way I'm going to do this. And they're preparing the fight. And, so it's a up and down path to recovery. There's relapse. It's all part of recovery. It's all part of life. Just, like anything. And you rally your forces and get your education and do all the different things that parents do to steel themselves against whatever they need to.
Yeah. In all of this, I just wanted to know, what impact did this whole experience have on your other daughter?
Thank you.
This.
Thank you. I wrote that down in my notes, and it's right here. Thank you.
We're on the page.
I would have been feeling so bad if I did not bring that up. It's in bold letters right there. The siblings. It's really hard. It's really hard.
This is your older or younger daughter that was...
My younger daughter had the diagnosis, and my older daughter did not. And it's really hard because I needed to be with Anna. I needed to go away with her. And so it was 2 hours away. And I couldn't leave. couldn't go take a day trip or a lunch or tea. I could not leave for months. And you know, when a person's suffering from anorexia, they need to be very selfish, and they can be very unkind and irrational and have erratic behavior. And they're not themselves. You know, imagine how you might feel if you don't eat, you know, for one day. Imagine what starvation does to a person's mind. And so it can be really difficult to be around somebody with anorexia. And so you want to be compassionate and kind, but the person might be really cruel to you and saying things that make no sense. You know, like, I hate you. Why do you want me to eat this? I hate you. You know, with all their heart and soul, trying to say that. But so the siblings can feel really abandoned. And they are living their lives and growing up and having their own experiences, and they need you. And you cannot be physically, you know, kind of like now, you know, you just have to find a different way. And you don't always realize, you know, at the surface, that child might look like they are just fine. And I can guarantee you that they're not, because not only have they been abandoned, but they're really worried. Yeah. You know, they're really worried about their sibling or siblings or whomever. You know, I was there with kids who were 11-year-olds. A friend of mine just called me on last week, a student. I met this woman because her daughter was my student, and I recognized that this is she was a very assertive child with like all her own ideas and a lot of energy. And I remember one day remarking to the mom when she came to pick her up that, you know, I just want to tell you what I see in your daughter, you know, and I see this assertiveness and this light in her, and she just follows her own voice, and she's always really polite about it. However, at the same time, she's able to be really strong and share her ideas. And the mom, she thanked me, but she called me later and she told me that she was crying after our conversation and that she changed schools because her daughter was being criticized by the teachers at the school for, they thought she just wasn't, getting with their program. She was a pain. She was wanting attention, or it wasn't a positive environment for this girl. So the mom changed her schools, and then since then the mom and I have become friends and I've remained in contact. But this mom called me and told me that her daughter, and she's a physician, and she said she has anorexia. We've just gotten the diagnosis. What do you suggest we do? It's, and I'm part of a parent support group here where I live. We haven't met for a while, but it's just hard to work it out. But it's, it just keeps popping up, and you hear the same story, and some stories are a lot harder. Some parents don't have the support at home. It can be very common for a spouse or, significant other to disbelieve the diagnosis, to really want to give the child everything they need. You don't need to make them eat that, or just not get with the program and do the body talk like, oh my God, I just ate so much, or that food was sinful, I need new jeans. All the body talk. Yeah. Don't do it. Just don't do the body talk. None of us need the body talk. It's so harmful. And so even the people with the best of intentions, it's not an easy path for the parent who is trying to, follow what the doctor's suggestions are. And that path isn't always easy. So it just takes everything. And you're just, getting back to the team and the diagnosis and the refeeding. Yes, we found this team, and luckily the nutritionist who pointed us in that direction had said, this is the place. If you're going to go somewhere, I could suggest that you move, somewhere. And we would have changed state and gone, to a different Ronald McDonald House. But this was the place that was really close to where we are, and that's where we went. And so, they did have to do daily checking your urine, and they have to, and that's also humiliating for the sufferer, because you need to be weighed only in a hospital gown after you've been naked, and they can tell if you've been doing what's called water loading, because people will try to drink a dangerous amount of water. And, so they can tell that. So again, I'd have to monitor her in the bathroom to make sure that she wasn't water loading, monitor her all the way up to drop off, so somebody could take her, weigh her immediately. And because we're dealing with a life-threatening illness, and the fear and the, when you're in that place, I really wanted to write about my experience. There are several mothers who wrote about their experience with their daughter through anorexia. And I read those stories when I could. Sometimes it was too frightening to read them. And I would try to write about it, and I couldn't. It's hard. It's like you're in a room and somebody's turned off the lights. The level of kind of fear that you're living under, the doom, the sense of doom, knowing that your child is feeling that way about themselves, and knowing and seeing what your child is suffering, seeing the level of suffering that your child and other people's children are going through. So that it's hard to describe, but it's very present. And so the flip side of that is the importance of support. The importance of how great it is to support somebody, and to be able to hear them, and to just be there and say, I care. That must be really hard. Is there anything I can do? And or being able to talk to other parents who have been through it, who are also suffering, or who have. It means the world to you. Yeah. And to be able to offer that to somebody too, to say, you're gonna, you have a good chance of being all right. You can't predict the future. It's a life-threatening illness. It is. And everybody knows that reality. And, just that, okay, you made it through this day. You made it through the meal plan today. And that's, exactly. Yeah, there are a lot of hallelujahs in there, even with all of the scary stuff.
Yeah, that reinforcement is really important, and that's part of the recovery process too, especially when you have the therapy and the group support. That's really important, aside from the medication and nutrition aspect of it. I know that some facilities offer group and family therapy. So did you ever go through that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we did. So she had group therapy every day. And they made, we had group therapy also for the parents, and then one-on-one therapy with somebody, and then family therapy with Anna and with me and Anna together, Anna and I. So yes, they did. They made all of that possible. And for the most part, it was really helpful. Sometimes it was challenging listening to someone else's story, hearing where they were at, especially if you just had been through a hard bout of relapse, or just, where you are in the process. There's something that they call extinction syndrome, is after the person has been refeeding and then weight gain has been happening. And when you're almost back to what they would call weight restoration, what they call extinction syndrome kicks in, which is that they say that the disease does not want to die. And so it's hard all over again. And I know this, I know that with certain addictions, certain drug addictions, there's a kind of a ebb and flow of maybe dopamine production, so that somebody may feel no or less need and then more. And so it could be something with brain chemistry like that, but it's real, and you think you've made it, and then everything, maybe they're still doing the meal plan, but the really terrifying, violent, physical behavior can return.
Right.
And so it could be hard to be in a group with somebody who's there, or, you could be ready to support. So it was helpful. It was really definitely helpful, especially when you're kind of onboarding, to hear other parents who, okay, you've made it. You've been here a week. For us, there were parents who left after 6 weeks. We were there for 6 months. And so it didn't feel so good, when some, parents would often say, so how long have you been here? Because I really want to know when I can leave.
Right.
6 months? You've been here for 4 months? And yeah, I don't want to leave. And you know what? Anna didn't want to leave either, because she knew she was in a safe place. She knew that she was where she needed to be be in recovery, and that to be in a facility where they knew not to believe her. And in moments of lucidity, she would say, Mommy, I'm so sorry. I hope you know that, this isn't me. And, and thank you. This is, I don't like this, but, and then the next, I hate you, but, yes, it was necessary for us to be in a facility and have that level of support. And there are parents who do it at home, and it works. I have unfortunately, another colleague, a woman at a school that I was teaching at. We were friends, and then she had heard about Anna because I had to stop working. Like, bam, I had to disappear, 100% disappear for at least 2 years. And yeah, and I shared only with a few people what had happened. I just, they tell you to say that your child has a heart problem, which is true. So we said, we're seeking treatment. And so she knew. I told her, and so she had called me to tell me her daughter had that diagnosis, and so the two of us had formed the support group together, actually. So yeah, you just need that support. And that's also why I want to dispel some myths and get some truth out about what this really is. I remember seeing there was a young woman in our congregation who had suffered and may still suffer from bulimia and anorexia, and she would make herself a plate of food that was like that, seriously. And I remember thinking, what? And she was really dangerously thin, so that it was hard to look at her. And I remember thinking, why don't her parents help her? What's wrong with her parents? Why is she even walking out? Why is she even walking around? If your child is over 18, you have to do some legal action to get them in treatment. This young woman was older than that, and her parents she'd been in treatment since she was a preteen, but it wasn't, she wasn't recovering. So I'm just saying that, any of us is capable of judging, even though we might be very kind-hearted and well-intentioned. But once you know some facts, then you recognize what people are dealing with, that it's a mental illness. It's not a choice. Nobody's choosing to have anorexia. And even saying that, we had, Anna had another friend here who had recovered, and so we thought that was a safe place for her to go and have dinner one night when she was allowed to do that. And Anna said she walked in the door, and the parents, because the young woman had shared what was going on with Anna, and the mom said, anorexia, you don't look that thin. So you can imagine. Yeah. So these are even parents who have been through. So it's so important to know and to know what people are dealing with, and to know some truth behind this. So go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, speaking about parents, you talked about the conversations that we have with kids. Even some people in the comments were saying they're careful about how they talk about food with their kids, but many may not know how to approach it, how to approach the weight, the food, all of that, body image. So what advice do you have for parents who want to engage in healthy conversations about eating disorders with their children?
Sure. I guess I would just go back to saying, first of all, if you find yourself in the situation where you think that your child has an eating disorder, it's not your fault, and it's not because of a conversation you didn't have. Then at the same time, this conversation is huge, because body talk, it's something probably every one of us here grew up with in some form or another. And even if you're looking up a fun Zumba video, the instructor might say, okay, hold your stomach and let's have skinny stomach, or this will really help burn off some calories. That's not why we're doing this. We're doing this to feel vital, to have, again, state, not weight. So I would go back to that idea of talking about state, not weight. Just keep going back, even if you feel like a broken record. Try to bite your tongue. Try to not use the body talk on yourself. Ask yourself, what is my state? What is my spiritual, mental, emotional, physical state right now? What do I need? Did I eat all my colors? That's how we try to, do food. Did I eat all my colors today? Have you, if you need a meal plan, have I eaten my meal plan? Have I had all my colors so I can choose my vegetables correctly? Have I done, there's movement for joy? Is it for joy? Is it for learning a new skill? If it's for losing weight, then let's go back and refocus on state. Because we need to move around. We're human. That's part of our evolution. And when we move around, we get happy hormones. Our blood is pumping. It's great for our heart. And all those reasons, all those health-related reasons to get it away from our weight. Even if you are someone, say you have diabetes and your doctor said it would help you to, diminish your weight by 30%. Even that, let's leave that to the doctor and use different diagnostics to get back to state, not weight. Because if you're weighing yourself, you might start feeling bad. And, it's a cascade of negative self-talk that keeps it from being fun. And if you have an exercise program and it's not fun and you don't want to do it all the time, find something else. Just try to, personally, I have dance videos that I do. I got jump rope from Josie. I have a little trampoline in the house. I take a walk. I do all different things because it's fun to mix it up. And sometimes, if I'm teaching all day, I just want to do something I just need to move around for 10 minutes, then I can. So it should be fun. If it's not fun, then, DM me. let's try to find some ways to make it fun. And, some things might take, like with the jump rope, it did take about 5 good days of it was hard to get past jumping for like 3 minutes. Now I can, but it's hard, so I'm not saying like it's fun right away, but like give it a week. If it's not fun, maybe it's not for you. And find something else to do. There are so many choices available that people can use for movement, that aren't extreme movement, that should make you feel really good about yourself. So I guess, to answer that, I would just refuse to go to the body talk, refuse to go to the weight talk. Leave that to your doctor and go back to state, not weight. What am I getting? What am I doing? And then, maybe springboard off of different things, talk about the magazine. Is that person airbrushed? Look at, mirrors and windows. It's the same thing with weight. It's pervasive. We need to see different body types. We need to see different skin color. We need to see ourselves represented in media, in movies, on TV, in our classrooms, on the posters that teachers have up in their classrooms, in holidays that people are celebrating. We need to see ourselves represented because that lets us know that we are here, we're welcome, we're valid. Just keep doing what we know we need to do. We know all of this is important and we cannot let it slide. So if there's some easy answer in that, it's that, just keep coming back to that like a broken record and just take that on. I'm not going to do the body talk. And then when you do the body talk, recognize, I did the body talk. How did that feel? Okay, now I know for next time. It's not a reason to get down on yourself. It's just an opportunity to recognize, this is in me. I'm capable of doing this too. how can I not do this with my child, in front of my child? Yeah, that's a really challenging subject. There's a lot of pushback there. So even the topic of cleanses, that's when with as part of the recovery, we were taught that it's any restrictive eating can be really, again, can put somebody back onto onto a disordered eating path. So that it's important, people who've had eating disorders are not really safe being vegan because that's just restricting. It's an excuse to restrict, and it's a slippery slope. So just, eat and enjoy your food, and if you need to know how much, ask your doctor. Ask a doctor to guide you, and or a medical professional, and recognize that try to take away that toxicity and the idea of a cleanse, because your body is in its perfect state right now as it is, even in illness. It's all a path, and so just going back to state, not wait. And it's hard, and it's good to look that up, like look up what are some words I can use, what are some ways to look up body talk, and see, there's a really great site, Health at All Sizes. I think I'll have to let you know. There are resources that address that.
Right.
So that's what I would say, it's not your fault, and, reflect how are you representing yourself, and notice what you're bringing into the house, and if it's something that it comes into your space, then use that as a springboard and talk about it openly.
Yeah. I think what you said is very crucial, especially when it comes to avoiding that one size fits all with eating lifestyles like veganism, vegetarianism. That's why on my page, I never say, hey, everyone, go vegan, go vegetarian, because first of all, I don't offer medical advice on my page, because I need to know your full medical history. Somebody mentioned in here that people who have a disorder called G6PD deficiency, that is something that affects your blood, the way that you oxidize nutrients in your body, that could be affected when you take on certain foods and certain diets. So one size doesn't fit all when it comes to diets, when it comes to cleanses. You have to know your health history and talk about these things with your doctor, because they know you best. They know what could cause a bad reaction for you. And like you said, it's interesting that you mentioned about the vegan lifestyle and that restriction and potentially causing a remission in someone who has had a history with restrictive eating disorders. So, we have to be very mindful of that and the language that we use. And another thing I think is really important is parents using that positive reinforcement and positive affirmations for their kids, because there's no way to control everything that kids are going to encounter on social media, outside, seeing billboards in the movies, things like that. But if they've had those positive affirmations from their parents telling them you are worthy, you matter, things like that, they're not going to use this standard of beauty to really say, okay, I need to make a change in how I look. Like I said, it is a mental disorder that we're dealing with. So there's no cookie cutter solution, but these are things that we can do in our power to help the situation by being positive reinforcers of, positive body image and increasing that representation as much as we can. Like you said, even in the classroom, things that in the classroom can affect them, they go home with that, and making sure they see that all those body sizes are represented is so important for them and for that developmental process.
Yes, in the classroom, holy cow. Yeah, I always, when a student is eating in my classroom, I take a moment and I offer praise there. I thank them. Thank you for taking care of your body. Thank you for eating when your body's hungry. In my class, you can eat if you're hungry. Please eat. Because again, there's so much behavior around that. around that encourages people to not eat regularly, to not have ordered eating, and it's so easily lost, and so yes, just it is so important to reinforce that. And I thought of something else, and it it left my mind that you to respond to the oh right. My other daughter, my daughter had said our dear friend had a book in her house that was really great, and it was called Something Like You Are What You Eat. Beautiful book, recipes and like skincare stuff, really fun book. And my daughter shared with me a couple of years, we ordered the book here, that book had given her ideas about not eating, that it had given her ideas about how to not eat, and that maybe she was eating too much. So it's just about the conversation. Right. We learned that 1 in 10 people are susceptible. What also happened with my daughter is that she was in cross country, and this is very common. It can be a coach who says, okay, everyone, we're going to get in shape. And then somebody next to you, like, I'm going to do, this. I'm not going to eat carbs for a week. And, and your child hears that and they get in shape, and it's, bam, it's the slippery slope that happens. And so that was also what happened in our house. Great coach, nicest person in the world, but it's, if you're the person who is susceptible to the piece that comes from starvation, it's genetic. And then, again, your brain says, I like that. I'm going to apply this here. I'm going to starve myself in this stressful situation. And then you tip the balance and you're in anorexia.
Yeah.
So,
and that's why you see that in a lot of men too, when it comes to wrestling and certain sports.
Yeah.
They have pressure from their coaches and to meet this standard of being, ready for competitions and things like that. So even in those spaces, we need to encourage better body image language.
Yes, and I had the experience where I was with, I'm going to be discreet about this, just making sure. I was in a situation where there was a child that I know who was participating in a certain sport, and they shared that their coach said that everybody needed to drop some weight. And I said, you are your own right size. Just like that. Like, I just stopped the conversation, just like, you are your own right size. Please remember that. And I got it from the parent.
Wow.
Later, like, you had no right to say that. You've been through this path and da-da-da-da-do. But, like I like lightened it up, but it's just like, no, nobody gets to tell you that. Nobody gets to tell you that. This child was 12 or 13 maybe when this happened. And it's that serious, I feel, and that important for me to step forward and really represent, the voice of reason, that, it's so important that you recognize that. So, I just, enjoy your dinner, okay? Maybe what else do you think your coach meant? Maybe make sure that you're at the workouts on time, then you do your workouts, because I don't want the child to feel reprimanded. However, right. It's just, and sure, it is, coming from what I've come through, I'm sure that came through in my voice, but at the same time, that child is at risk of this. And on my watch, I'm going to do what I have to do, and I just encourage people to, as we are learning these days, I'm just so happy to see people speaking out and knowing that, we may as well, because we have nothing to lose, everything to gain. And the people who aren't with us aren't really with us anyway, we're going to offend. Let them find their own circles, because we have work to do. So, so that you never know where your pushback is going to come from.
Yeah. No, I can totally see, and a lot of parents are very territorial when it comes to that, but I just wanted to also let people know that there are hotlines out there that you can access by the National Eating Disorder Association. If you go to nationaleatingdisorders.org, you can find out which call hotlines are available to you in your area. There's free resources like screening tools and ways to get medical attention, even without insurance. So definitely, I'll post that on this page once it's the live is done. But there are resources out there for you to learn more about this issue and get the help that you or your loved ones need. So just keep that in mind, because this is a pretty prevalent matter. So there's a lot of help out there for you and support.
Yeah, we did, from meeting the kids who were in the clinic, whenever there was, I'm just so hesitant to use gender these days, when there were some, they identified as boys, they would share that it was so hard for them. It was so hard their parents had a hard time even with acknowledging the diagnosis. And it was hard with the doctor, because people just don't think that could be what it is. And, both these guys had been with their dad to the gym, but then they started bringing their gym mentality home. And my daughter was doing, she was doing at least 400 burpees a day, she told me. So, burpees.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she said 6, but I'm going to cut it down to 4, 100 a day on an extremely minimal diet. So, and that's all, she said, that's something she remembered. That's not good for anybody. So I'm, so yes, it crosses over to everyone. And I'm so grateful again that you mentioned the siblings, because it's, just to keep that awareness and try to figure something out, try to talk to them, just keep in contact and remind them that you're still there for them, and maybe make an extra effort to remind them that you're there for them and that you care and that you can handle it, that, yeah, you're going 100% with this one child, but the heart, love is infinite, and you find your resources. And so just, talking and, maybe I can't be there right now, but, I want to hear you and I'm there for you. So, yeah. And to encourage the siblings to talk and not worry that they're going to be a burden is what I'm trying to make that point. Yeah. That no child should feel like they're a burden, and it is extra work for the parent to make sure, and maybe even find other relatives or friends to bring in, to recruit, to be somebody extra for them, because it's the hardest thing. Everything has to stop, social life, work, family, everything stops to care for that child, but they're it's worth it. Yeah.
I think that's a important fact that you managed to address, in terms of giving enough attention to your daughter that was not going through the eating disorder. And I think group therapy, like you said, and also the support groups with the other parents who are going through the same thing helps too. So for everyone involved, everyone just needs to know that they're not alone, and they have support, and they're not a burden. Because it's something that takes a collective effort to recover from.
Yes, and I just have to say, I didn't know how my other daughter was suffering in the beginning. She didn't want to let on, and I didn't know, and I didn't know that additional part of her fear. When she was finally able to say, "Mommy, I'm so afraid of on," and she's so mean. There's so many relationships to navigate, because everybody's a new person. Like, kids are always growing, so they're always a new person. You think, I've got this year down, and then oh, now you're 13. How do I deal with that? But now you have a mental illness, and you are having behavior. How do we deal with this? you can kind of just laugh and get support, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you. Thanks for remembering to ask those important things and reinforce those ideas.
No, it's my pleasure. You know, I'm always I don't like to say I ask questions outside the box, but I always try to think about what everyone involved is going through. And there's always someone that happens to be kind of like, what about me, like in the corner? And, you know, if you, in the moment, it might be hard, but you caught sight of that and you were able to address that. And now I'm hoping that their relationship has mended and that they're closer than ever, because that was something that they went through together.
Yeah, it was hard. You know, it's interesting for Anna and I. So she was 18 when we went to the clinic, and she thankfully agreed because the doctor was ready, you know, with papers to sign and attorney links and things like they were on it. They were 100% ready. I mean, she escaped. You know, they told her, can you drink this can of Boost so we can see if we don't have to put you in the hospital tonight? Like, they knew exactly what to say to encourage her, motivate her. And so she didn't actually have to go into the hospital, which was, you know, but where was I going, Fashion?
Oh, their relationship.
Yes, thank you. Okay. At the Ronald McDonald House, most of the rooms are rather small. They're really beautiful, like it's great queen size bed and dressers and a bathroom. Like, they're nice, but they're like not huge. We had the amazing good fortune of getting a huge suite. Like, it wasn't a suite, but it was a huge room that had kind of a separate area and a bathroom. Thank goodness, because we were there for 6 months, right? So imagine being with your daughter, and because she'd been, you know, through this starvation for a while, you don't mature. All this maturity stops. So after recovery, all kinds of maturity happens, and it's very exciting. But so she might be 18 and 19, but she's really more like 16 or 13. And so, you know, then they need to rebel and read all the different things. So imagine living with your mother during those years for 6 months in the same room. So, you know, and you want to kill her. I mean, you know, you want to kill your mom because you're suffering from this mental illness and your mom's trying to feed you. So my point is that it really, you know, whatever we needed to go through in our relationship, we did. And so we came out, you know, very close and able to talk about things through that. And I'm so grateful, you know, that Anna could share and trust and, you know, go work with this program that we had and, you know, come to the point she's at in recovery. So she was able to go abroad twice to go to school, and she was able to learn, you know, and go to college and have her independence. And that's, you know, that's what you want. So yes, so through that time we did, you know, we ironed out our our ways to peacefully coexist and pretend that we had 2 different rooms when we were actually like side by side.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you have to feed them. I had to feed her and watch and make sure she's really eating, you know, to that level of infantilization. Not for the whole 6 months, but, you know, enough of it. So, so the relationships survived, thankfully.
I'm so glad to hear that. And I just want to say thank you so much for opening up. I know that could not have been easy, but you you reached someone out there tonight who needed to hear this message, who might be going through an eating disorder themselves, or they know a family member or loved one who's going through this. And so you know, when you came to me about this issue and wanting to share what you knew about it and dispel any myths about it, I was really happy to bring this conversation forward because it's so needed. So I want to say thank you so much for sharing what you've learned through your experience and all the vulnerable moments that you had with your daughter. And, you know, it's really, I know, an emotional time, but it's done some good for someone out there for sure.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, because that's really my intention. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions also. Because and feast.org, feast-ed.org is really, that was founded by 3 mothers whose children suffered anorexia also. There may be 3 physicians or nutritionist and physician. They're all medical professionals. And the website is a wealth of information and support and learning and blogging and things like that. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. It's good. I prepared myself. I'd like mentally prepare. I'm going to keep it together.
Yeah. No, and you did. And you gave us so much vital information. And like you said, you extended that invitation for people to ask you questions. So if anyone wants to know more about this from a firsthand account, please don't hesitate to contact Victoria or myself. I can help in any way I can in terms of what medical facts you want to know about eating disorders and where to get help. Yeah. There are tons of resources out there. I will post the website I was referring to in the post when this goes on Instagram and on YouTube. I'll post it there as well. So any last words that you'd like to share with everyone?
Always. Yes, just be kind to yourselves, you know, that negative self-talk. Talk to a friend. You know, if you hear that, I mean, that's something, both of my daughters are capable of being really angry with themselves and using a tone with themselves that I don't have. This is why I'm saying this because there is more genetic than we're aware of. I might be frustrated or, oh, why did I do that? Or I feel so bad or some kind of guilty thing, but I am not self-destructive and never have been. So it's so important that if somebody recognizes that voice within you, it's not helping you. I mean, I don't know, I'm not going to speak for everybody. Maybe that's somebody's motivator, but maybe there's a positive voice. And as far as, you know, our bodies, it's just moving should, even if your movement is wherever you're at is where you're at. And it's important to find somebody who can help you facilitate a movement method that works for you wherever you are at right now. So I would say that's what's so important, because it is a source, you know, moving, exercising can be a source of joy. And I would hope that that's what it could be for everybody, you know, and the same with eating and trying anything. And if it's not, then let's figure out why it's not, you know, like that's important too. The things that are hard, it's you know, like going back to school, in our schools, I'll make this short, get on another soapbox, but we're telling 30% of kids that they're failures because we have a grading system. Why is that legal? When we know how that affects people psychologically, right? That's legal. Something's wrong there. So again, we don't want to turn that on ourselves. If something isn't working, let's figure out why. That's valid information. It's valuable. Let's use that. Make it a strength. You know, so same with ourselves. If something's not working, then have compassion. And, you know, I'm not saying I'm so great, I'm like the queen of compassion, but have compassion. Try to find out why and try to find the compassion and call fashion for some compassion. You know, like try to figure it out and, you know, just make it okay. And then use that as like, okay, here's where I'm at. What do I need? Instead of negative self-talk. That's all. Yeah. It should be fun somehow, you know.
Yeah, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, take things a day at a time. Don't be hard on yourself. That was my motto of 2020. Don't be hard on yourself, because it's so easy to set this standard of perfection that you probably will never reach, and you just have to be okay with I did this today. I accomplished this today. I did the groceries. I went to work. I got out of bed. Like, make it as simplistic as you need it to be. You don't have to win the Nobel Peace Prize every day. Sometimes it just, you being able to smile and go to work is a lot.
Yeah.
But you did it.
That's
You did
right.
it.
Yeah.
So you have to be kind to yourself.
Absolutely. I read that. I read somebody who was that success can mean that you got out of bed, you got dressed, and you ate. That you made it through that day, because if that's all you were, if that's what you were able to do, you can't have that day over. So you may as well celebrate it somehow. It doesn't mean that's where you want to stay or that you don't want more. However, it's just make it, make it okay in that moment and see where you can go from there. So yeah, back to being kind.
Yeah.
It's a good practice, and it takes a lot of work.
It really does.
Yeah. I mean, I did the other day, like wake up and go, okay, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good. And then I like started making this rhyme in my head, like everything's good, and what rhymed with everything's good. And I just like, okay, this is making me feel better. And I just stayed, because it was like, I woke up and I was feeling emotional. Like, and I just like somehow just started doing that, and this is good. And it worked. And it helped me get up and then start my day with a better attitude, I didn't want to bring bad attitude into my day. So, it's just tricks.
It's tricks. Yeah. It's letting that positive voice win.
Right.
No matter how quiet it may be some days, let that voice win.
Yeah.
Because the negative can be so loud, and not only the one in our head, but also the ones around us. So we have to really train that positive voice to be the loudest one that we hear and the one that we listen to. Yeah.
Yes. I love that. Right. Yeah. Be kind and listen to the positive voices. Yeah.
Exactly.
And not toxic positivity either. That's not what we're talking. We're not talking that. And we all know that in here. Yeah. So let's talk about the bad stuff, because that's how we get to the good stuff. So
Exactly.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Fashion. My heart to yours. It's so fun having you and everyone here in the house. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, Victoria. And thank you for everyone who stopped in and watched, and all the supportive comments. Your presence is greatly appreciated. And I can't wait to have our next episode. But until then, I hope you have a lovely evening, and send my regards to your daughters, and
I sure
wish you
will.
all lots of love and happiness.
Okay.
All right. Have a good night.
Bye. Thank you. Do I click the X or do I just wait?
Yeah, you can click it.
Okay. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Fashion.
You're welcome. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to tonight's episode of Testimony Tuesday. So this will be posted. It's actually streaming live on YouTube right now, so it's going to save there. I do that so that you can see all the comments, because when you do it on Instagram, the comments don't save. So this video will still be here on Instagram, but if you want to see all the comments, just go to my YouTube channel. It's linked in the description in my page, and subscribe to get notifications when the video is available. And like I said before, just let me know if you have any questions about eating disorders, the medical side. If you want to know more about the firsthand account and how to deal with it as a parent, definitely reach out to Victoria for more information. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys' presence and support. And I hope you guys have a lovely evening. And thank you. Tune in next week. We'll be back with another guest. All right. Take care.